Hi guys, my name is Bobby and welcome back to my channel, and today I'm going to be doing an unhaul. Now, I think I've done one unhaul before. I think it's like when I first started my channel I did an unhaul, but I like to do it when I've got quite a bit, and everything that I unhaul gets donated to my library here in my small town. So I've gone in before after I've donated some of the books and I've seen my books on the shelves. So anything that they can use or, you know, is something that they don't already have in the library, they will, of course, put into their library on the shelves. If they don't need it, there's a little shop kind of thing that's attached right to the library that's called Friends of the Library. So any donations that they can't use in the actual library are sold there at a very discounted price. And I think the money goes to charity or back into the library. Okay, so I have about 20 books to unhaul for you. I'm going to talk a little bit about them if I have anything really to say. Some of them I've read, some of them I've just lost interest in. So let's just get into it. The first thing I'm going to unhaul is a chunk of a series. I started reading this series because of Sam over at Thoughts on Tomes. Like, it's an older YA fantasy series, and she really loved it, and she didn't like some of the later books, but loved the original ones. So I have book 1, book 3, book 4, and book 5. So the only ones I don't have is book 6 or book 2. Book 2 I read on Kindle. Yeah, I got it from Kindle, but that's the Falling Kingdoms series by Morgan Rhodes. I've read book 1, book 2, and book 3. I have not read Frozen Tides or Crystal Storm, book 4 and book 5. I read book 1, loved it. It's very tropey YA fantasy, but at the time it was written in, because it's like from early 2000s, it actually wasn't half bad. I liked the world and the way it's set up, and I really enjoyed it. I read book 2 and liked it. I read book 3 and liked it. It was like getting better, but then other stuff came up. I kind of lost interest, and I didn't really feel the need to continue on with book 4, 5, and 6. I heard book 4 is like one of the best in the series, but book 5 and 6 are mediocre. So since I have no intention really of reading book 4 and 5, it's time for these to go. The next book I'm going to unhaul is The English Wife by Lauren Willig. I tried reading this for, what was it? It was in October. Was it Spookathon? Spookathon or Booathon, I don't remember. I didn't get very far. I got like maybe 100 pages in. I didn't agree with the writing style. I didn't like it at all, so I ended up DNFing it, so it's going. The next book I'm unhauling is Apart in the Dark by Anya Alborn. This is 2 novellas. I think there's 2. Yeah, 2 novellas. When I first bought this on Book Outlet, I thought it was an actual story. Like, I've yet to read Anya Alborn. Like, she's a female horror author. I've heard great things about her. I own Brother, which is in my closet pile of disaster. I own Brother, and I own another one on Kindle, I think, or 2. I think The Neighbors, I think I own on Kindle. Either way, I have yet to read her, but I'm not a fan of bind-up novellas, and I'm not really a fan of short story collections. So even though I haven't read this one, it's going. Next, we have everybody's favorite that I love to rant about, and that's The Stolen Marriage by Diane Chamberlain. It's an absolute shit garbage dumpster fire with legs, and it is going. I'm so happy to get this out of my fucking house. Next book I'm going to unhaul makes me really sad because she's one of my favorite authors, and that's Pieces of Her by Karen Slaughter. This book was terrible. I love Karen Slaughter. I've read a lot of her books, but this just was not what she is used to writing. I'm used to her gore and gripping, really gripping thriller. Like, all of her books are so gripping and so amazing and, like, fast-paced, and this was just, but it's going. Like, I feel really bad about it because I paid full price for this book, but there's no use keeping it. I mean, people like to keep books all the time that they hated so that when they do worst books or unpopular opinions or whatever, they can hold it up and be like, yeah, I read this and it's trash. But for me, it's like, why keep it? You're taking up valuable space on your shelf. Why not just do, you know, what we do with ebooks and audiobooks? Just put a picture next to your head of whatever it is you're unhauling or talking about, because why not? Like, I don't get it. But Karen Slaughter, bye. Next is The Woman in the Window by A.J. Finn. This was very popular last year, really popular thriller. I do not understand the hype. I read it and hated it. I think I gave it 2 stars, and that was being generous. It's all about a woman with agoraphobia who stays in her house and she spies on her neighbors all the time. There's new neighbors that move in, like, across the way. Like, I don't think they're right next door. I think they're across the way. She witnesses, like, what she thinks is a murder. She's not sure what happens. She's also obsessed with Alfred Hitchcock movies, so as you're reading, you're not sure what's real and what's not. It was completely lame. You spent most of the time just with this woman getting drunk all the time and trying to help people online who also have agoraphobia, because she's also a therapist who has agoraphobia. So she knows how to fix herself and heal herself, but she chooses not to. So instead, she gets really wasted on wine. She's definitely an alcoholic. She talks to these people online to help them with their agoraphobia, yet she sits there getting drunk all the time and, you know, watching old Hitchcock movies. I have nothing against reliable narrators or alcoholic characters, but when the whole story is her just sitting there getting drunk and watching movies and nothing really happens to the end, and this book is ginormous. It's over 400 pages. Yeah, it's over 400 pages. It's thick, but you expect me to spend 350 of that reading about her just getting drunk and watching movies? That's boring. So I don't understand the hype around this. I don't understand why people actually enjoyed it. It's going. It's time for it to go. Next is Damsel by Elena K. Arnold. This I got in one of my bookie boxes. It has a signed book plate. And this, like, I was actually interested in reading, and it's about a damsel, and in this kingdom, let's see if I can explain, the prince, in order to get married, the prince has to go slay a dragon and rescue the damsel, and then he marries the damsel. They get married, have children, the process repeats itself. And it's been doing this for years. So this follows, I can't remember her name, Amma. She's the main character, she's the damsel, she's rescued by the prince, and, you know, then of course she's expected to marry him. So, the problem with this one is I didn't read it. I wholly intended to. I'd heard good things about it. Julia had talked about it and said she really loved it. But then there was a couple other reviews I saw. It's got a lot of problematic themes. This is marketed as YA, but from everything that I've heard about it, it is very much not YA. The themes are very, very dark. There's a lot of rape and abuse and stuff like that in here, to where it's not good for a YA level reader to read it. So I kind of spoiled myself on it because I watched a spoiler review, because I was like, well, if this is really intense, like, do I really want to give it the time? Because I hadn't been given much. Apparently, like, the story goes okay, but it's just, throughout it, it's very violent, lots of rape, lots of sexual assault, and it almost feels like overkill, to where that's the whole plot until the very end. And the whole point at the end is that the damsel's actually a dragon, she's not actually a damsel. And, you know, it's just, I don't know, like, I don't really want to read an entire book that's marketed toward a teenager about rape and sexual assault. Next is The Lantern's Ember by Colleen Houck. This was also a bookie box get, and I feel really bad unhauling, it's also got a signed book plate, unhauling bookie box books, because Julia takes so much time and care to pick out the books that she puts in her box. And without her, I would have never read The Savior's Champion, which was my favorite book last year. So, I mean, a lot of them are good, but this one, just reading the flap. I mean, this is about a girl who's a witch, and there's a boy who guards this bridge because the bridge is a gateway to another world, and he's supposed to guard the bridge to not let anybody in or out. Of course, the girl wants to get in for whatever reason, so she sneaks past him, and he has to chase her, but he's seen her around, and it was love at first sight. Just from reading the flap, that tells me there's insta-love in here, which is one of the tropes that I cannot stand. I don't want to read a book about insta-love. I do not want to read a YA that's supposed to be like a witchy, you know, kind of spooky story that is completely overshadowed by a romance that you saw coming a mile away with the insta-love. So it just does not interest me. Like, if it just focused on her being a witch and stuff like that and was really light on the romance, then maybe, but so this one's going to go. I know I'm never going to read it. It will literally just sit in my closet forever. Next is one I got in a box as well, but this was the Pop Readers box, and it was not when I was still subscribed to it. It was one that she put out as a special. She went back to college, I believe, so she stopped making her box, but her box always included a book, usually a YA fantasy, sometimes an adult fantasy, and a Funko Pop that was a new release that kind of went with the theme of whatever the box was. She did one for October, and it was like Scary Monsters or whatever. I have the one guy up there. I'm probably going to give that Funko Pop away because I have no idea what it's from. I believe it's from something that Funko had made up themselves. But the book that came with it was Grim Lovelies by Megan Shepherd. Everybody was hauling this book last year. Like, everyone. Like, all the big booktubers were hauling it. And I think it's because they did paid promotions to read and review the book. But the funny thing is, I've never seen a review of this. I think I've seen, like, one. And I follow a lot of the big booktubers just to see kind of, like, what's new or whatever. But nobody has reviewed this. This one also, this one actually comes physically signed. Like, not even a book plate. Like, the book is signed. Like, I thought about it and I was like, okay, well, it's signed, you know, you should keep it, but I'm probably never going to read it. It's like, got this weird magic system where, like, there's people who are actually animals, and a witch, like, you can be a human and live as a human, but a witch has to make you that way, and, like, I think she has possession of your heart, and, or something like that, or is that a cross between another one? Okay, so it's nothing to do with that. Excuse me. Like, a witch can enchant the animal to become a human, but if the witch dies, then you have a certain amount of time before you turn back into an animal, and then there's a love story. Like, I don't, it just didn't appeal to me. So, and even though it's signed, like, actually signed with a Sharpie by the author, I never intend to read it, so it's going. Next, like, I don't even know, like, how long I've had this book. Like, this book was part of, like, I think it was one of my very first book outlet hauls that I did, like, before I even had my BookTube, like, where I was just watching BookTube a lot, and all these people were using Book Outlet. I'm like, what is Book Outlet? Should have never gone on that website, because then I fell down a frickin' rabbit hole, because, you know, Book Outlet is amazing, and they have brand new books for, like, half the price, or even a third of the price. So yeah, so this was one where it was like, I need to get this, you know, this much more money until I get the free shipping. So, or it was one of, like, their Boxing Day sales or whatever, where you get, like, a certain dollar amount, you get this much money off. I think if you spend $50, you get $20 off or something like that. So this was just like an add-on, and I think it kind of sounded interesting. I don't even remember what it's about. But, like, now I'm looking at it going, I will never read this. It looks so incredibly cheesy. And that's The House of Four Winds by Mercedes Lackey and James Mallory. Like, this was just a random one on there. Oh, it's book 1 of A Dozen Daughters. So this is like a pirate fantasy series, I think. A charming, adventurous, swashbuckling romantic fantasy by Mercedes Lackey, the USA and New York Times bestselling author of Tales of the 500 Kingdoms series. And James Mallory, the bestselling co-author of the Obsidian trilogy. So, I, like, had read the little synopsis, like, on Book Outlet, and was like, oh, that seems okay, like, pirates and fantasy, but, like, just look at that cover. Like, that tells you right there, this is going to be more about, like, bodice-ripping romance than it is ever going to be about fantasy. So, after going through my shelves, I'm like, why the hell do I even still have this? Bye-bye. The next is The Perfect Mother by Amy Molloy. This was a Book of the Month book, oh geez, back in May of last year. This is a thriller, and I was really interested in reading it until I saw Lala at Books and Lala review it, and then I changed my mind. This tells the story of a woman who is part of a group called the May Mothers, I believe they're called. All these women had babies in the month of May, and so they kind of have their own little group where they all get together with their babies and they talk and drink wine or, you know, do whatever, just have like mom time. And one of their babies goes missing. And so, I mean, it did seem kind of interesting, but after what Lala said, she goes, it was pretty much a basic run-of-the-mill thriller where all the steps, like, you can see everything coming, and the ending was kind of eh. So I decided that I'm not even going to bother to read it. This was in the video, in one of my last videos I talked, it was one of the tags that I did about BookTube where, like, what was a book that BookTube had changed your mind about, and this was one of them. I fully intended on reading it, but after reading it was just one of your stereotypical, you know, thrillers where everybody figures it out. It wasn't going to be worth my time. Next on the list kind of follows that same thing as The Perfect Mother, and that's When Katie Met Cassidy by Camille Perry. This I got because it looked fantastic. I mean, it is a very short, small book. This was a Book of the Month pick in June of last year. This is only 256 pages, 260 pages. It is, yeah, 260 pages. This is a very short book. I figured this will be a really quick read. It's about, I think Katie is the main character, or is it Cassidy is the main character? Katie is the main character. So this is like a lesbian romance, and that's kind of what appealed it to me. I was like, ooh, okay, so like a little diverse romance. It's kind of short, you know, why not? But then people started reading it, and I guess it's absolute trash. So I guess this is about Katie, who works, I don't know, if like in a big city, and she meets with Cassidy as like a client or whatever for whatever business she does, and they end up going out for drinks, but Cassidy takes her to a gay bar or a lesbian bar, and then, you know, they kind of develop this romance, but I guess the romance is not healthy. It's kind of toxic, where Katie constantly says stuff like, I don't belong here, this isn't my place, these aren't my people, so pretty much putting down lesbians, but meanwhile having a lesbian relationship with Cassidy. So for me, I'm like, no, that's not worth it. And that kind of stuff bothers me. I have a lot of lesbian friends. I have a lot of them. I love them all dearly. I've gone out to gay bars with multiple times with them, but I never felt uncomfortable like I didn't belong. Just because it's a gay bar doesn't mean shit. So that really, really bothered me when I think Chelsea at Chelsea Darling Raids had talked about that because she identifies as bisexual as well. And so I think for her, she had said also that it made her really uncomfortable where you have this woman who's obviously bi or straight curious even, which that's another thing that makes me a little uncomfortable. Straight curious people tend to give bis a bad name, because if you're a straight girl, you're a straight girl. You don't just get to, you know, randomly sleep with a lesbian and be like, oh, I was bi for 10 seconds. Like, it's frustrating. So Chelsea had said that when she said stuff like that, it made her very uncomfortable. Like, you know, and so for me, like, that's not worth it. That's trash. Like, you're obviously not writing, you know, a lesbian relationship properly if it's a straight girl who is trying out a lesbian relationship and the whole time she's pretty much putting down lesbians. Like, nope. Next is Dragon Shadow by L. Catherine White. This was in one of my last bookie boxes, my adult fantasy ones. This is like book 2 in a series. You know, I'm not really that interested in the premise. It seems almost kind of like a Pride and Prejudice retelling with dragons. Like, and I'm not a big fan of Pride and Prejudice. Don't come for me. And with this being the second book in the series, I have no intention of picking up the first one in order to read this one, so it's going. Next, this might be an unpopular opinion, and I apologize kind of ahead of time, but not really, because I shouldn't have to. But that's Crazy Rich Asians by Kevin Kwan. This, I tried reading. I got, I think, about halfway through. His writing style, oh my god, his writing style is terrible. This book is what? I mean, it looks like a smaller paperback, but it's really not. This book is 527 pages. It's one of those big floppy paperback with really small print. Like, he writes, like, this book should be at least half the size. This book should be maybe 300 pages, 350 tops, not 530. This, like, I DNF'd it at around 200 pages. Spencer over at Common Spence, I'm glad somebody else agreed with me. Like, he just posted his January wrap-up, and he DNF'd this one also for the same reason. I believe he DNF'd it. Or he gave it, like, 2 stars. Either way, he didn't like it as well. This tells the story of a woman who is dating, she's Asian, she's dating another male, like Nick, I think his name is, who's Asian as well. I can't remember her name. Oh, Rachel. Yeah. So she's dating a boy named Nick, who comes from a traditional Chinese family. She travels with him to go visit, and then once she goes to visit his family, she realizes he is, like, ridiculously, like, multi-millionaire rich, and he never really told her before. But it follows so many characters. Like, everybody in his family has their own different story arc, where you just kind of want to get back to the main one about Rachel and Nick, and, like, how is she going to handle his crazy, rich Asian family, and how is she going to assimilate, because she is American-born. She's full-blood Asian, but she's also American-born. She's not, you know, Chinese born. And, like, I don't even remember she's fully Chinese. Does she have, like, Filipino in her, maybe? Or, like, I didn't think she was actually Chinese. Or maybe she is, but I thought maybe she had, or it was just that she was an American-born Chinese. That she wasn't actually born in China. Either way, like, it was just, I wanted the story to be good. I wanted to love it, and I didn't love it. And so I ended up DNFing it. Like, he spends so much time describing shit that just does not matter, and does not matter to the storyline. And there's way too many characters, and usually I don't mind a diverse cast and a very big cast. But when every single one of them has a point of view, and every single one of them you have to follow, and it's like, I just want to get back to Rachel and Nick. Like, what's going on with them? I won't watch the movie. Like, if I didn't like the book, I'm definitely not going to like the movie. I mean, I guess the movie's probably going to cut a whole bunch out. But unpopular opinion, Crazy Rich Asians is not good. This should be no surprise to anyone. I DNF'd it in December, and that's The Afterlife of Holly Chase by Cynthia Hand. I really wanted to enjoy this one, but it was super duper uber super cheese-tastic, and I do not do cheese well, so it's going. Next is another book I DNF'd, and that's The Finishing School by Joanna Goodman. This one I got from Book Outlet. Like, I was really excited about it. It's about, takes place in the 90s, I believe. Oh no, takes place in present day, but you go back in time to the 90s when the main character and a whole bunch of other girls were in a Swedish boarding school. And so I love the 90s flashback. I read a little bit of it, but I had just read The Broken Girls by Simone St. James not too much before I read this one, because I tried to read this one at the start of my channel, and I just read The Broken Girls, and The Broken Girls was amazing. Like, I love that book, and this one was too similar to it, where a girl disappears, dies, and, you know, so all the girls end up leaving the boarding school, and now they're all reconnecting for some reason or another in adulthood, and trying to figure out what happened to their friend that disappeared / died. since I'd already read that, I didn't want to read another one about it. So I don't think there's really anything wrong with this story. It's just I read it too soon after the other one, and I don't really feel like giving it a chance because I love The Broken Girls so much, so it's going. And the last book that I'm going to unhaul is going to be a very unpopular opinion if you like YA. And I don't feel bad about it. Again, I read this one about halfway through and I was super bored. Like, it just would not get to the point. Like, there were certain parts of it where it was really interesting and I was really engaged, but then it would go to, like, the main character. And I think it's just because I didn't like the main character. And that's Ember in the Ashes by Sabaa Tahir. Like, sorry, unpopular opinion. Laya is the main character, and I found her completely boring. She was absolutely a mess. She was so boring. And I liked, what's his name? Is it Isaac? Elias. So Elias is the other character, so you get dual perspectives. You get Lias, and then you get Elias. Say that, Laya, Elias. Or I don't know if you pronounce it Laya or Leia. The way it's written to me, it's like Laya. Either way, she was boring. She was sufferable. She was whiny, woe is me. Like, this is a very dark fantasy world, and it's like, girl, you've been living in this for a while. You should have a little bit tougher skin, especially since both your parents were rebels and were killed for it. Like, you think you'd have a tougher skin. But her perspective was very, very annoying. Elias I loved. I loved Elias, and I can't remember the name of his friend. She's in here, too. She's most people's favorite. I just can't remember her name. Helene. It's been so long since I tried to read this. I think I read this like tried to read this almost a year ago. But everybody loves Helene, and Helene, a lot of people do. Like, Heather at Bookables loves Helene, like, that's her favorite character. And I liked her and Elias. I liked their arc way better. I mean, Helene's trying to be this super soldier in this army. Like, I don't remember much. I'm sorry if I'm butchering the synopsis. But Helene is, like, a female in a very male-dominated soldier thing. So, I mean, and she's a badass. And the way she stands up to it and, like, kind of puts people in their place and they try to be sexist towards her, like, I absolutely enjoyed that and I absolutely loved that. But I could not stand Laya. She's just, oh my god, she's annoying. And I really wanted to love the story. Like, everybody else seemed to really enjoy it, and I liked the world building and I liked the dystopian, like, fantasy world, but can't stand the main character. It's just not gonna happen. Okay, guys, that's it. That is my unhaul of, like, about 20-ish books. I'm not gonna hold them up. They were on my bed, and as I was talking about them, I moved them to the floor. I'm not picking up that hot mess again. I already tried to pick them up for the thumbnail, and that was a disaster. Let me know down below in the comments if you've read any of these books and what you thought about them. I'm sorry if I'm unhauling one of your favorite books. They're just not for me. But I'm curious to see if any of you guys have differing opinions. So please let me know down in the comments, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.